Hello, welcome to Live Vedanta, a podcast about simple living and high thinking. If you need to catch up on an episode, just go to our show notes. We link to the very first episode of the season and also the last episode that airs, so you can join in at whatever point feels really good for you. But on today's episode, when everything is moving so fast outside, it is easy to start living fast inside. Fast thoughts, impulsive decisions. How do we slow the rushing flow to find that place of stillness within so that we can interact with the world from a solid, unmoving anchor, rather than be pulled along with the wild goose chase? How can we remember what's important in the midst of the day's constant change? Let's listen into Vivekji on how to anchor ourselves into the greater quietude within.
Hari Om, and greetings from Niagara Falls. Pata means very much what it's spelled out as, which is path or way. In a subjective science, like the one we're immersed in, path, way, these are all equivalent to practice. We have now completed 2/3 of this course. We have now completed 21 weeks in training ourselves in how to reflect. And so I'm checking in with all of you. We're going to go decade by decade. How did you practice this week in reference to this Mokshapata, Advaita Vedanta, self-development, starting with those in their 20s. Everyone who's in their 20s, I want you to write out in the chat, how did you practice this week? And I'm going to flow through all of the decades. However, everyone else, you are not preparing your answer. You're reading in the chat. Be in the present in this communal learning. There's some in this class who are in their 20s, no? How did you practice? Sleeping earlier, waking up earlier. Good. You used what you're learning to make better decisions. Good. Disassociating from negative thoughts. Good. Keep sharing. I'm now shifting to those in the 30s. If you're in your 30s, how did you practice? Everyone else, we're reading. 30s. Not letting yourself get annoyed. Only those in their 30s are sharing now. Embracing nature. Good. Practicing gratitude. Good. Practicing forgiveness. Good. 30s done, 40s. Everyone in their 40s, share how you're practicing. Only those in their 40s. Everyone else is reading. Changing your narrative. Good. Accepting more. Good. Managing emotions. Good. Being patient with yourself. Good. Shifting to those in their 50s. 40s complete. We're all reading how those in their 50s have practiced this week. Maintaining quietude of mind during a conflict. Good. Dedicating all to Bhagavan. Good. Following a routine with discipline. Good. Practicing discipline. Good. 50s complete. We continue to those in their 60s. How did you practice? How did you follow this path? Those in their 60s. Being patient with others, good. Being more focused, good. Being more silent, good. Balanced mind, lots of silence, good. Those in their 70s, how did you practice? Those in their 70s. Not being judgmental. Good. Over the past 2/3 of this course, the past 21 weeks, if you have been disoriented by your experience in this course, let there be one orientation you now have, and that is value the deep. When I had explained how simple living is expressed through Shiva, V stood for value the deep. Each of the words in the Mokshapata is deep. And when you value this, you become this. All of the practices that you're describing, you were able to practice this because you're deeper. If you were shallow, you would react. If you were shallow, you wouldn't follow through. There are others in this class who are in their 70s, but they don't want to admit that they're in their 70s. That's why they didn't write. I was waiting for them. I appreciate those who are accepting of the age that your creator gave you. What are you trying to hide from? Headspaces 63, 64, and 65 are all connected. Jiva, the individual. Jagat, the multiverse. And Ishvara, or Jagadishvara, the creator. I will review this collectively. The individual is one who feels that they are small. Technically, we would call this the micro. They feel small, and so what do? They try to fill in this smallness by feeling they are the intellect and the mind and the body and the articles and so on. So they feel small. They try to fill in this smallness with more smallness, and that makes them feel even more small or insecure. The jiva is an identifier, one who is inauthentic. So naturally, if one wants to be authentic, one can't identify with that which is small. One has to identify with that which is big. The Jagat, which technically is the macro, is still small. The Jagat is still relative. When Vyasa sees me, he thinks I'm tall, but I would say, compared to my friends, I'm not tall. It's relative. So the jiva is small, the Jagat is also small. And since it's small, don't depend on it. Conversely, be a sadhu, one who helps this multiverse and evolve in being a sadhu to being a suhrid. A suhrid is one who has no expectations. So helping without expecting. This is how not to get caught up in identifying with more smallness. Jagadishvara is the cause for the effects, that is the macro and the micro, the multiverse and the individual. For those of you who own the Seeker's Word Book, there's a lovely photograph, a lovely picture relating to Ishvara. You know those huge wands that create bubbles? You see them, people have them in the parks during the summer, and you wave them around and these bubbles come. And sometimes in those big bubbles, they form other small bubbles. Have you all seen that before? That's exactly what Jagadishvara is doing, is waving this wand. And there's big bubbles like the multiverse, and there's small bubbles like the individual. But what are bubbles finally? And don't think of this so technically. It is soap and water and air. They're all the same substance. They're all the same substance. It is better understood in water. The bubbles in the water, that's all just water. And so, another word for Upanishad, or what we're flowing through, it is known as Vedanta Vichara. Vedanta Vichara. When one starts to value the deep, starts to become the deep, then one knows that the foundation of the individual is Atma. The foundation of the multiverse is Brahma. Atma and Brahma, they are of the nature of existence, awareness, joy. Remember I explained that in terms of stones and plants and animals and humans. That same message is being shared just in a different framework. Existence, awareness, joy. Sharing two more insights about this before we continue. Logically, if an entity is like this in the beginning and an entity is like this in the end, then in the middle, that entity must be the same as it was in the beginning and end. Yes? So when we think of Jagadishvara, before the individual and the multiverse, who was there? The creator was there. After the multiverse and the individual comes and goes, who will still be there? The creator. So in the middle, the creator has to be there too. Existence, awareness, joy doesn't change. Expressions of that changes, but the foundation does not. And so the final implication I'm sharing with everyone in terms of this framework, the jiva, the individual, feels that they are in control. And that's why for most of us, our personalities are controlling. Yes? How many of you, by a show of hands, feel that is a weakness of yours, that you're a controlling person? Lots. And it's almost like the more responsibilities you have, the more controlling you become. And that shows a miseducation. The more responsibilities one has, the less controlling one should be. So for those who are younger right now, those who have less responsibilities than a typical, let's say 40 or 50-year-old, this is your opportunity to train yourself in not being controlling. the individual feels they are in control, the truth is that Jagadishwara is in control. She was there in the beginning. She's there at the end. She's also there in the middle. So what should the individual do? Offer that control to the controller. This is the intelligent way to live. When Puja Guruji Swami Tejomayananda shared this with us in reference to Bhagavad Gita, it was brilliant and it was mind-blowing that Prince Arjuna, who values his sense of control so much, finally gives that control to Bhagavan Krishna. And that is the truth. Bhagavan Krishna is in control. Just visualize the virtues that are needed to give up that control. Acceptance, humility, surrender. Exactly what the Moksha Patha is designed for. We continue. 2 more headspaces this week. Headspace 66. Mantra. Also pronounced mantra. Mantra is teaching. In English, teaching. The word Shastra, what is the English word I keep using for Shastra? Please share in the chat. A relatable English word. Good, good, good. Active listening. Maps. What do maps provide you? What do maps provide you? They give directions, exactly. So, a scripture gives teachings, but making this more relatable, a map gives directions. When you follow these directions, eventually what happens to your relationship with those directions in that map? What happens when you finally follow the directions and finally reach where you need to go? You become independent. That's right. You don't need those directions anymore. Yes. You don't need those maps anymore. When you get off a plane and you get through immigration, do you keep your boarding pass with you? Unless you're a super important person that needs to track, others may analyze where you are, but you recycle them, right? It's all completed. You've used what you needed to use with that. So, these mantras, these teachings, they're finally to be let go of. And this is so beautifully shown in Bhagavad Gita, in the chapter we're exploring in the morning. Shri Krishna shares, Matparaha, the highest direction is Matparaha, for you to become me. For Arjuna to become consciousness. And the completion of that, Mat Sanstam. For Prince Arjuna or us, we do become Sri Krishna. We do become consciousness. So, these directions are leading us to not need the map. Being more specific now, zooming into this more. There are some mantras which are Pauranic. A Pauranic mantra, can you give me an example? Typically used for chanting. A mantra that relates to the Puranas, like Ramayana or Bhagavatam. Om Namah Shivaya. That's a Pauranic mantra. Clear? And then there are Vedic mantras, mantras that relate to the Vedas, specifically Vedanta. An example of that, Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahma Asmi. Everyone sees those differences. What is the use of Om Namah Shivaya? To use this teaching, which is following the Shastra, to become Shiva. Aham Brahmasmi, to become Brahman. These mantras are designed to be reflected upon. For those who are immersed in Bhagavad Gita or our Upanishad, if you're not oriented to the fact that they're designed to be reflected upon, you feel they're confusing. You feel they're indirect, but they're designed that way. That way, our minds are ever engaged in that mantra. When you're watching a movie and someone is speaking and you miss the dialogue because there's a plane outside or there's a phone call, but you're into the movie, you're into that dialogue and you've missed it, what do you keep thinking about? What you missed, correct? You ask someone to rewind it, or you go to a website and you read through that because you're into that. Your mind is engaged in that. And that's why a mantra has the etymology of, please remember this, mananat trayate iti mantraha. Mananat trayate iti mantraha. Mananat means to be reflected upon. Trayate means to cross, to transcend. This direction, when you reflect on it, when you engage it, this will help you to cross that map, to not need the map. You have become joyous. And for all of our yoga students, what does Rishi Patanjali share is yoga. He shares this right in the beginning. What is yoga? He uses the word nirodha, as some of you have shared. Nirodha means to transcend. Are you seeing this connection? Mantra, that which helps me to cross over fear, cross over ignorance. Yoga, that which helps me to transcend the mind and the equipments. Mantras are potent. And that takes us to the next headspace, 67, which is japa. Japa. What does japa mean? You tell me. How do you explain this to someone who has no background in Sanskrit and Vedanta? What does japa mean? You're all such copiers. Meaningful repetition. If you didn't know that, you would have written chanting, correct? If someone asked, what does japa mean? You said chanting. Then they'll be like, what does chanting mean? Who chants on a regular basis? You sing, but do you chant? In the Seeker's Word Book, japa has been described as remembering. Remembering. Remember all of these definitions. The focus is on this being practical. So let me elaborate. That which is simple is that which is rememberable, is that which is practicable. Do you agree to that theory? If a recipe is complicated, it's much harder to remember what's involved in that recipe, yes? And so even more difficult to prepare that. That's why, for those who are highly evolved, they eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Even more evolved, Nutella sandwiches. That's it. Bread, chocolate, bread. Simple, rememberable, practicable. I learned this from my mother. My sisters and I, that's all we ate. From junior kindergarten all the way to the end of high school, it was just alternating between peanut butter and jelly and Nutella. When we remember, we feel. Let me give you some examples. Let's go with negative first. Do you all remember when Kobe Bryant died? Yes. And it was, even for those who have no connection to athletics, we just think that he must have been 40 years old, I think, that a 40-year-old died in a very routine way on a helicopter going somewhere, and his daughter was there. Are you remembering this? You're feeling it. Even if you have no connection to that. When that happened, my cousin, he texted me saying he was crying. My cousin's not even into basketball, but I think a lot of people put themselves in that perspective. Let's spin it to the positive. Do you all remember when the COVID vaccine was developed and it started to get administered? Do you all remember that period? There was so much hope. Are you remembering it right now? You're feeling it. There's such potency in mantras. There's such potency in remembering. When you remember, you don't need as much externally. As an example, I want you to all visualize that you're eating your favorite bowl of cereal right now. Visualize it. Visualize drinking the milk after Cinnamon Toast Crunch. See, now you don't need it. Because that's how powerful the mind is. What are we to remember? We are to remember that which is meaningful. That which is meaningful changes our mind in three ways. It raises the quality of our thoughts. Let's start with that which is not meaningful. Pen. 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 Already you're thinking, how do we manipulate this word into pencil, into pencil crayon? See how distracted we are. But if we change it to nature, 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 it's much more meaningful, correct? You raise the quality of your thoughts. And if you raise the quality of your thoughts, what automatically happens? You reduce the quantity of your thoughts. For those who are in a conflict today or this week, and your mind was racing, if you could pray for anything, I'm sure your prayer would be, why don't these thoughts slow down? Yes. How? Here's the practical way of doing that. Raise the quality of thoughts. This will reduce the quantity of thoughts, and then this will redirect the flow of thoughts. Redirect the flow of thoughts. Where the jiva is not identifying with smallness, the jiva is engaged in reflection on who am I? What is my foundation? I have lots more to share about mantras and japa, but let me summarize. When one engages in japa of a mantra, It nurtures Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. Whatever you think about that is meaningful, you develop a connection to that. For us, who have been together for many years, I have faith in you and you have faith in me, correct? That's that connection. Our experiences facilitated that. And japa of a mantra also nurtures samadhana, which means focus. How many of you, if you could pay $10,000 to increase your focus by 50%, how many of you would pay that $10,000? Those who don't have their hands on, you've not thought about this enough. Focus is one of my strengths, and I'm willing to pay $10,000, $100,000 for 50% more focus. Faith and focus, Shraddha and Samadhana. These are requirements for nididhyasana or contemplation. So for all of us who want to be contemplators, why? Because contemplation is the only means to be content. The prerequisites, faith and focus. How to do it? Japa. Japa of what? A mantra. Simple, rememberable. What was the next part of this framework? What's after rememberable? Practicable. Practice these head spaces. These spaces should be in your head.
If you enjoyed what you heard or want to learn more, share this episode with a friend or find us online at facebook.com/cmniagara. For those on the journey of self-development, Chinmaya Mission Niagara provides a community forum for seekers to listen, reflect, and contemplate. This podcast is produced by the Young Adults of Chinmaya Mission, an international nonprofit working to transform individuals through the knowledge of Vedanta. Until next time, inspire, love, be.